Good morning. I'm Herb Heathcote. I'm on the Board of Trustees, and I'm happy to welcome everybody this morning. Thank you, Carolyn and Rod, for taking over the sound system today. Jason has COVID, and so Mandy and Jason are not here today. Cases of COVID, flu, and RSV have been increasing recently. If you've been reading, you've been noticing that. Experts say the best way to protect yourself is to get vaccinated. And you can also decrease your risk of infection by wearing a mask and staying in well-ventilated places. On Wednesday, January 24th, Reverend Zachary will be leading the monthly medication gathering at Cedars Center from 5 to 6 p.m. On next Sunday, January 28th, the Social Justice Committee will be collecting donations for the Ukrainian Association of Washington State. After the service today, there'll be a short meeting here in the sanctuary to provide a mid-year report on the status of the congregation. Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. Set this. Before I give our opening words this morning, I want to invite you all to take a moment to turn to each other, to rise and greet each other and welcome ourselves into this space together. Could you turn it down a little? It's I hope that you have connected with someone either you've already known or maybe someone new. Please feel free to continue these conversations, these connections after we finish today. This is a great chance to just meet people, reconnect with people, get to know each other a little deeper. I invite us into this service today, this reflection on working with shadows, with these words from Alejandro Jodorowsky. Having lived many years in Mexico City, I had the opportunity to study the method of those called witches or folk healers. They are legion. Every neighborhood has one. Rising up in the heart of the city is the great Sonora Market, which sells exclusively magic products, colored candles, dissected fish shaped like the devil, images of saints, medicinal plants, blessed soaps, tarots, charms, plaster sculptures of the Virgin of Guadalupe turned into skeletons, and so on. In some back rooms, plunged in semi-darkness, women, each with a triangle painted on her forehead, rub branches of herbs and holy water on those who come for consultations. They practice cleansing the body and the aura. Professional doctors, being faithful sons of the university, despise these practices. According to them, medicine is a science. They would like to find a precise, ideal remedy for every illness, with each treatment distinct from all others. They want medicine to be one official method with no variations, to be applied to patients who are treated only as bodies. None of them proposes to cure the soul. folk healers, on the other hand, medicine is an art. It is easy for the unconscious to understand dream language than rational language. From a certain point of view, illnesses are dreams, messages that reveal unresolved problems. Folk healers develop personal techniques with great creativity. Ceremonies, spells, strange medicines such as cafe au lait laxatives, rusty screw infusions, mashed potato sanitary napkins, animal excrement tablets, or moth eggs. Some have more imagination or talent than others, but all, if consulted with faith, are useful. They speak to the primitive and superstitious individual whom we all carry inside. They speak to the primitive and superstitious individual whom we all carry inside. Come, let us worship together.
The 2013 movie Frozen is mostly about the relationship between two sisters, Elsa and Anna. Elsa, the older of the two, has magical powers that are related to ice and cold and snow, while Anna is more of an ordinary child. In a scene near the beginning, Anna wakes Elsa early in the morning, and they go down to a large ballroom. Or they're princesses, they live in a castle. They go to a large ballroom, and Elsa creates ice to skate on and large mounds of snow for Anna to slide down. Then something tragic happens. Anna slides too fast over one of these mounds of snow over the crest, and she is airborne. She's going to fall. Elsa, in a panic, tries to create another mound of snow under her to catch her. But instead, she hits Anna in the head with a bolt of snow magic. Anna falls to the floor, unconscious. Elsa screams for her parents. Elsa's father concludes that they must take Anna to the trolls. I'm sure this makes sense in the universe in which the story is set. Anyway, they go to the king troll, maybe the elder troll, the philosopher troll. His position in the troll community is unclear. Whatever, the main troll recommends that all memories of Elsa's ice magic be removed from Anna's mind. And from that point on, Anna cannot know of Elsa's abilities. Their father is intent on helping Elsa hide her gift and closes the castle to the outside world. He tells Elsa to conceal it, don't feel it, and this becomes her mantra. Elsa cuts herself off from Anna without explanation, and feeling like she is unable to control her magic, she becomes more and more afraid. There's a scene set years later when the two sisters are sitting on opposite sides of a closed door. Anna in a normal-looking hallway, pleading with Elsa to let her in, while Elsa, scared she'll hurt Anna again, is in a room that looks like it's been hit by a blizzard. Returning for a moment to the earlier meeting with the trolls, I left something out. It's an important thing. I left it out because I didn't really hear it until I'd seen the movie a few times. And I think it's clear that Elsa didn't hear it, and Elsa's father didn't hear it either. After removing Anna's memories of the ice magic, the philosopher troll tells Elsa, "Your powers will only grow. There is beauty in it, but also great danger. You must learn to control it." And then he says, "Fear will be your enemy. Fear will be your enemy." What the troll has done is left Elsa with a conundrum. She needs to conceal this part of herself from her sister. She needs to, at the same time, learn to control this magic and not be afraid. The trolls don't give us a clue how this might have been done in practice, nor do the writers. As the movie goes on, we see that Elsa has failed to control her fear, and her father has taught her only to be more afraid. Perhaps the writers didn't know how to balance the inherent complexity of this theme with their main theme, which I haven't mentioned at all. I dedicate the lighting of our flaming chalice to the idea that when it comes to fear, we all just have to let it go. Please, please join me in repeating our affirmation as printed in your order of service. As we come together to worship, we remind ourselves to treat all people kindly because we are one family, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, and to live lives full of love and goodness because that is how we will all become the best that we can be.
Rise as you are willing and able. Our opening hymn, number 20, Be Thou My Vision.
invite us first, let's all just take a stretch, reaching up, breathing in, and however you feel comfortable. That's mostly for me. I've mentioned to a few of you, I have a crick in my neck today, and so need to improve that range of motion. 2 weeks ago in our service about words and their power, we talked about a concept from ancient Egypt of the various aspects of the self. And there are many of them, but today I want to talk about the shoot. The shoot is the aspect of the self that is described as the shadow. If you remember in that service, we talked about how the shadow, along with this bird-like persona of the self, could travel other places and do your bidding from after the grave. But we're not going to keep exploring that. Today, I want to invite us into a little bit of motion and exploration of our own shadows. I know the light in here is really bright, and we're blessed for that in this dark time of year. And so our shadows are a little subtle. But I want you all to take a moment. Notice on the ground your shadow. Notice as it moves. Notice how it interacts with the shadows of other people, with yourself, with the light. We're going to take just a few moments and continue exploring our shadows in this way. Feel free to get a little playful, to move around as Nick provides some music as we play with our shadows. You have a good one there. Invite you to return to your seats. I'm curious during this playful exploration, what did you notice about your shadow? Just the physical noticings, but what else did you notice?
There were multiple shadows and they were moving like in different directions.
So multiple shadows moving in different directions. Was that you having multiple shadows? Yeah, we can have more than one shadow moving in different directions.
I noticed that the intensity of them, because of the lights and the angles, some were darker and some were more like transparent.
Yeah, the light, there's an intensity, and I noticed like Mike and I were talking, he was by the window and had no shadow. What else?
The closer you got to the ground, the darker your shadow gets.
Closer you got to the ground, the darker it got. Any other insights?
There was a point at which I could position myself and raise my foot, and the three shadows of my foot would go away, and then they'd converge back again when I lowered my foot.
Yeah, so it's sort of like you move your foot, they go away, they come back, you can kind of expand, contract. Yeah, depending on where you were, your shadow might also disappear. We'll be talking more about shadows later in the service, but I just wanted us to take the time to notice that aspect of ourselves that is following us around all the time, that oftentimes we might not even notice. And that is our time for all ages. I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of change, breathe with us in this moment. Move through us in this moment as we breathe together, united as a community of sojourners and seekers, seeking a glimpse of that truth, a truth of unity that passes all words and understanding, a glimpse of that truth that simply is. We know that in this time that we have gathered, there are those in this room whose hearts are heavy. Let our presence be a balm to them. Let us also bear those things that we would like to lift up, those prayers of joy and gratitude, of sorrow and wholeness. Help us to inspire one another to be that spirit of change, to live into those values which we boldly proclaim. May this be our prayer on this day and the days ahead. May it be so. Amen.
On many Sundays, we set aside some time for the sharing of joys and sorrows. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you would like to share, please come forward, state your name, and in a few brief sentences, share your joy or sorrow. Pour a little water in the bowl for a joy so that we all may be buoyed up, or place a stone in the bowl for a sorrow so that we may all share your burden. For those of you at home, please take these moments to reflect upon your own joys and sorrows. And as a reminder, this part of the service is neither live streamed nor recorded. and pour a little bit more water for all of the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, held delicately in our hearts.
Our centering hymn is number 369, and as this is probably unfamiliar to you, I'm going to have our accompanist play it once over. But before I do, I want to read the words, because there's only one verse, and if you're wrestling with the tune, you're probably not even going to notice the words. This is the truth that passes understanding. This is the joy to all forever free. Life springs from death and shatters every fetter, and winter turns into spring eternally.
The line, "This is the truth that passes understanding," reminds me of a quote I like. Ambrose Bierce says, "That small part of ignorance that we arrange and classify, we give the name knowledge." And this reminds me of something a famous mathematician, John von Neumann, said. He said, "In mathematics, you don't understand things, you just get used to them." All suggest our relationship to knowledge is tenuous, and the first hints that we are limited by the empirical. At Cedars, we continue to try to press the boundaries of ignorance, and in support of that mission, we pass the baskets as eternally as spring returns. If you are visiting for the first time, please feel free to let the baskets pass you by. You are a guest, and we are happy simply that you are with us today. Would the ushers come forward to collect the offering? Thank you for your gifts.
Ged was in over his head. He was trying to prove himself to his classmates on the Isle of Roke and gave in to the provocation of one of his classmates named Jasper. And there, on the grassy knoll where the two stood, he accepted the challenge and did what was forbidden. He tried to summon a spirit of the dead. But everything went wrong. A shadow appeared instead of the spirit that Ged had hoped to call forth. The shadow attacked him. He was saved in the last moment by one of his elder teachers who came and drove the shadow away with light. But the shadow wasn't gone. It was just somewhere else for the time being. If you aren't familiar with the details of this story, don't feel bad. That's okay. It's the summary of the beginning plot of the first book in Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea trilogy. These are books that I received from a mentor when I was probably about somewhere between 16 and 18 and have turned back to again and again. Gregory and I were talking a little earlier, and I don't always think Ursula K. Le Guin's writing is the best, but I think the themes in these books are powerful. Throughout the rest of this first book of the Earthsea trilogy, the protagonist Ged, the protagonist Ged is on the run from this shadow that he called forth. He tries to hide on far-off remote islands, thinking that he'll be safe. At one point, he actually tries to build a life, thinking he no longer has to run. But eventually, the shadow always seems to find him. Near the end of the book, exhausted from running, Ged returns to one of his mentors to seek some counsel about what he should do. It's then that his teacher enigmatically tells him that to light a candle is to cast a shadow. To light a candle is to cast a shadow. This statement sparked in the mind of young Ged, and he knew what he had to do next. From that point in the book on, Ged no longer runs from this shadow that he has called forth. Instead, he sets out going towards it. In the book, it's explained there's sort of this link that the two can tell where they are. And he turns towards it. In the end, in a small boat on a mist-shrouded sea, he finds himself face to face with the shadow. But there was no duel or epic fight that broke out. Instead, Ged called the shadow by his own name. He called the shadow by his own name, Ged, and the two became one again. Probably not literally, but I think that there are times in our lives where many of us feel as if we're running from our own shadow. Maybe something that's lurking around that we don't always notice, but is there. I know this is true of me in my life. There have been times when there was something that I was avoiding, adamantly avoiding. And despite my avoidance, it still seemed to follow me. Thinking of these shadows, I want to call back to mind what Alejandro Jodorowsky said about his experience with those called witches or folk healers. The people who offer rituals and charms to foster wholeness, he said, these healers, these practitioners speak to the primitive and superstitious individual who we all carry inside. To give you a very innocuous example of what this might look like, I think back to the time when I was in college at Western and first started attending a Unitarian Universalist church. I didn't have a lot of friends in my friend group or social circle that were churchgoers. I remember that when it would come up what I was doing on Sunday, I would dodge the question and say, oh, I already have another commitment. I wouldn't say that I was going to church. I was embarrassed to tell people. What would they think? How would I tell them that it wasn't that kind of church? It was different. Heck, at the time, I could barely even explain what kind of church it was. Eventually, as this part of my life grew, this church-going part, the part that brought me to where I am today, my embarrassment turned to shame. I was still hiding something. Why couldn't I just tell people? Like Ged, I continued to wrestle with the shadow. And like Ged, it was only once I named the fear, shame, and embarrassment that it subsided. As I mentioned, this is a pretty innocuous example of the sort of shadows that I'm speaking of. But not all of the shadows in our lives are so benign. Sometimes these shadows are the result of past trauma that keeps us stuck, rooted in patterns of behavior, rooted in fear. Or other times these shadows can take the form of addictions that hold on to us. Shadows come in many forms. And whether or not we acknowledge them, just as we learned earlier, they're still there. In my time as a minister, I found it interesting that at least a dozen or so times, I've met with someone in a congregation or community who has identified themselves as an atheist. And yet when faced with a crisis, a diagnosis, or other challenges, I've been asked to say a prayer. I've sat at the table of staunch humanists who have asked me to give a blessing over a meal or to just help set the intention. I don't fault these people or think of them as somehow converting in these moments of crisis or these moments of gathering. I think it's natural to turn to something larger than us when we are in need. In times of turmoil, such acts speak to the primitive and superstitious individual whom we all carry inside. In these situations, what I have come to believe is it's not that the atheist or humanist is converted, but rather there is something deeper within the mind at work. A hidden longing or desire or something else hidden in the recesses of the psyche, waiting to be named and acknowledged. So, little caveat here. I don't particularly love Alejandro's language of primitive and superstitious individuals. And at the same time, I think he is naming something about each of us that is worth exploring, digging into. Namely, that there is always more below the surface of any individual than can ever be fully brought into the light, be fully understood, be fully communicated. There is always more. Think of those images you've probably seen of the motivational posters of icebergs, where you just see the tip up top and then the picture below shows this massive, massive structure. Carl Jung also spoke about the importance of working with and acknowledging our shadows. Unlike Ged, Jung wasn't talking about a literal shadow creature or specter that was chasing us through the world, haunting us. But rather, for Jung, it was the shadow self, or those parts of us, like the iceberg underwater, that remain hidden. Jung's understanding of the shadow self was rooted in his predecessor Freud's concept of ego and subconscious. Jung theorized that the aspects of the self called ego was made manifest in the world through our relationships in the form of what he called the persona. That our ego, that outward part of us, manifests in a persona. That's what we see of each other, that part of the iceberg above the water. Jung personified this part, the persona, as a counterpoint to the ego, though, is the subconscious. This is the part of our being that is at work behind the scenes, that shadow that is following us. It's the automatic responses, the unexamined assumptions that influence our actions, but are not fully known or understood. Jung personified this part of the self and called it our shadow self. Not because he believed that this part of the self was inherently bad or nefarious, it wasn't malicious, but because, like our own shadows, it remains a part of us that is shrouded in mystery and unknowing. In this model of thinking about the self, one of the goals is to try to shed light onto these shadow aspects, and through doing, move them from the shadow of subconscious into the persona of ego, to work through them in a way that they become incorporated in healthy ways in our external life, to shed light on them. It's not my sermon, but I think about earlier when we were by the window and there was so much light that there was almost no shadow you were able to see. That is what is at work. Engaging in such a process can be challenging. It requires that we look deeply within ourselves and to ask hard questions. Questions like, what things do you most fear others discovering about you? Do you ever feel shame? Why? Where does it come from? What are your biggest triggers in life? And when do you remember them starting? What are your negative self-images or thoughts about yourself? That internal monologue. When are you very angry at others? What things do you think about them? What things do you think about others when you're mad? And what do your most recent dreams tell you about your fears? Despite the discomfort that this process can bring, many have found that engaging in this work can lead to personal growth, change, and transformation. For many, this may seem completely silly and unscientific to think of the self in this sort of metaphoric way, and to be honest, it is. It is. But that doesn't mean that there isn't wisdom, something worth exploring in these approaches. After all, while many different names have been used, this approach to working with shadows has been practiced for thousands of years by cultures around the world in the form of colored candles, dissected fish shaped like the devil, saints, medicinal plants, blessed soaps, tarot, charms, plaster sculptures of the Virgin Guadalupe. This work takes place in the back rooms today, Places plunged into semi-darkness with women rubbing bunches of herbs and holy water on those who come for consultation. This work has taken place in huts and caves around fires for years. This work is powerful work that we are called to do to the glory of life. I'd like to invite us to rise as you are willing and able as we prepare to sing our closing hymn of the service, hymn number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire.
Without asking anybody, I'm going to make a small change to the order of events.
I trust you.
After I extinguish the chalice, and after Zachary says the benediction, and before the postlude, I would like to invite a board member, probably Jeff, to give us some instructions about the meeting, about chairs, and when it's going to start, and things like that. Please repeat after me as I extinguish our flaming chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth.
The warmth of community or the fire of commitment.
The warmth of community or the fire.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. I invite you to join me in a call and response song. Courage, my friend, you do not go alone. Courage, my friend, you do not go alone. We will be with you to sing the journey home. We will be with you to sing the journey home. Our service has ended, but our service to the world and one another begins anew. As we go forth, may we know, despite all the complex work that we are called to as individuals, we are not alone in this work, for we have each other. May it be so.
We will be having a short congregational meeting after the service. There are plenty of carbs over there for you to fuel up on, as well as caffeine and non-caffeinated items. It won't be too long. We only have a few things to go through, but also offer an opportunity for folks to ask questions and get caught up on where we are. So please.